Hello, welcome to Phoenix and Flame. I'm Dana, otherwise known as the Queen of Boundaries, and I'm so glad you're here. You've landed in a space full of support. My website, danaskaggs.com, offers a free boundaries quiz, online courses, coaching support, and my funny blogs. I'm also available for speaking events. If you live in Tennessee and need a therapist, visit danaskaggs.therapy.com. Now, without further ado, let's get to our next awesome episode. Welcome, friends. Whether you're out on a walk, running errands, or relaxing at home, it's wonderful to connect with you. Joining us today is Dave Mowry. Dave is a comic telling his story of living with severe mental illness, one joke at a time. He also teaches stand up comedy to folks with a mental illness, helping them find humor in their dark days and lost years. Dave, welcome to Phoenix and Flame.
Hey, thank you, Dana. Great to be here.
This is awesome. Now, before we get started, I also wanted to point out that you are the best selling author of the OMG That's Me mental health books. You're a blogger of over 1 million reads, and you like to say you're a comic who shatters stigma one joke at a time.
Exactly.
That is
Exactly.
wow. That so much to dig into.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where would you like to start? I mean, your experience with bipolar and what that meant to you, and we'll just weave back and forth and just have a good conversation.
Yeah, that's great. I think starting, with the bipolar, I was a successful businessman. I had it all. It seemed like happy family, nice house, kids, everything was great. Then in 1994, I had a psychotic break and fell into a deep, deep, deep depression. I couldn't function. I couldn't function socially. I couldn't do anything business. I couldn't function. And we lost everything. Lost our house. We were homeless for 18 months with the kids. Uh, and that started my 14 lost years and dark days of not being able to function socially, not being able to sometimes get out of bed. I couldn't go to the mailbox in case I saw a neighbor and they'd look in my eyes and see the illness, the sadness, the loss, the sense of dread, the overwhelming sense of dread. Um, so I'd go to the mailbox at night so I wouldn't see anybody. If I heard a song on the radio, it would trigger an experience, a thought, and I'd have a panic attack. Uh, it was bad. It was, terribly bad. I spent time in the hospital, but, those are my last years, and, yeah, I mean, I could tell you stories about, the dark days and the overwhelming sense of depression and the impacts, but, you know, we don't we don't need to go to all those dark places unless you'd like to go to some of them.
Well, I think you have an excellent point. Maybe not going to all of those dark places, but I'm listening to you from the perspective of my listeners and viewers. And in
Mm.
case there's someone out there who happens to be sliding down into what may be some lost years for them, or maybe they're in a lost year right now and they just happen to be listening to this podcast, what I would be interested in you potentially sharing are some experiences. Maybe pick 2 or 3 that were more poignant for you that would explain to people that maybe have never experienced something like this. Somebody that's listening, they might have a friend or a relative who is going through this, but they don't understand the practicality of what someone actually feels, what was an experience, and if you could share it in a way that they can understand, if you were going through this, what it's actually like.
And the depths of depression are almost indescribable. I think there's, um, situational depression and clinical depression in my mind, and the clinical depression is awful. You go to these deep, deep, dark places with constant negative thoughts. Um, I could if I was able to get out of the bed in the morning and make it to the couch, it was everything I could do just to sit and just to be, just to hold it together, just to be. I prayed and prayed and prayed for peace of mind. Um, I couldn't shower. I couldn't shower. People comment to I wrote a blog post about too depressed to shower, and the overwhelming response was, me too, you're telling my story."
Mhm.
And, um, if I did make it to a social function, I'd stand against the wall and try to blend into the wall and pray that nobody came up to talk to me. And if somebody did come up to talk to me, I'd answer in one word, one-syllable words, and try to be as boring as possible so they'd go away.
Mm.
The panic attacks were overwhelming. If somebody if something, somebody did come to talk to me, if there was any added stress or anxiety at all, I'd start to sweat, have a panic attack, and I'd have to it was everything I could do just not to just take off and run away, but I'd escape as soon as I could, and, it'd take days to recover. I think, for folks who are going through this to understand um there is I mean, I was in the darkest, deepest places, and there is hope, you can come out the other side. I never resigned myself to that was the way it was always gonna be. Uh, I did accept the fact that I had bipolar disorder and severe anxiety, uh, but I just kept trying
Mhm.
and, and kept trying, kept failing. I don't know if fail is the right word, but, I'd crash and burn, and then 3 months later, I'd try again. But if you're listening, you got a family member, um, yeah, those are some of the experiences, and I could go on and on.
I remember, someone telling me one time that for them, getting out of the bed, just trying to get out of the bed in the morning, we're not even talking about taking a shower, just getting out of the bed. They said, "Dana, trying to do that felt like I was trying to pull the Leviathan from the ocean depths." The energy that it took to just get out of the bed was so much more than they had. Like, they were being asked to do something that was so much more than they had the energy to do, and I thought, "Well, that was" I never forgot that description.
Yeah, yeah, and that's exactly right. You're laying there. I would lay there just trying to hold it together, just trying to hold it together, just trying to be, and getting out of bed to do anything was overwhelming, and, I'd sleep in my clothes. It was too much to take off my clothes at night to go to bed. It was too much if I did get out of bed, it was too much to get dressed again. So I slept in my clothes for months and months and months. It was just too much to take off my clothes and to put them back on.
Okay. I you said something a few moments ago that sparked a memory of mine. I remember having a conversation with someone one time, and she said that she was terrified that she was never going to get better because there was no she had no proof, she had no evidence that this horrible darkness, this horrible weight was ever going to go away. And for her, that was almost worse than the current situation, was this terror that she was always going to be stuck there. That if somebody could tell her, "No, you're not going to be stuck there," this she could, like, hold on to it like to a life raft in the middle of a tsunami, but she didn't have that, and so that she was just terrified that she was gonna stay just like that for the rest of her life.
Exactly. I felt the same way when you're in that deep, dark hole, and you look up, you don't see a light. You don't see an end. I didn't see an end. I hoped for an end. I tried, like I said, I tried and tried again and tried again. But and it's important, I think, what I share with people is don't get stuck. Um, when we're feeling that way and that there's no hope and no end in sight, just do something small. If it's getting out of bed, um, and going downstairs and sitting on the couch, that's an accomplishment. But if you're in that state, sit on a different in a different spot on the couch, sit in a different chair. If you're taking medicine, I'd take 'em in order, left to right, um, and then sometimes I'd take them right to left, and each one of those little things was me not getting stuck, me finding a little hope that there was the possibility that I'd come out of this.
Those are great. I love those ideas. Just really small bites and really readjusting the expectation, your self expectation.
Yeah.
It's got to be readjusted during that period of time.
Yeah, definitely.
So, Dave, you mentioned your family, and I'm kind of wondering, and I'm listening
Mhm.
again from the point of my listeners, and sometimes it's hard for family members to understand what's going on, and they certainly have a right to their own frustrations and aggravations and confusion and these types of things that people are going to experience during something like this. What pieces of advice or words of encouragement or support or inspiration or whatever that you could give family members if there's a family member listening and they have someone who's going through this and they don't know what to do. They don't know what it feels like. They don't know when it's going to end. They're experiencing as a family like you so explained so well earlier about losing your job, being homeless. I mean, there are definite consequences to going through something like this. What are some practical pieces of wisdom that you could share with some family members that might be listening?
I think first is that it's not a moral failing. It's not a moral failing. It's a medical condition, you know? It's an imbalance of the brain, a chemical imbalance of the brain. It's happening, so the person going through it can't, uh, can't do anything about it at that point. They're just, trying to exist. So, as a family member, accepting the fact that it's not a personal failing and realizing that the person, your spouse, is not lazy, and that, they're doing the best they can because truly they are, and going through this and coming out the other side, is one of the hardest things to do. People with, deep depression or bipolar disorder, are the bravest people, are the most courageous, the strongest to be in this place and to get through it. So I think acceptance. My wife accepted the fact and didn't wasn't angry with me, you know? She didn't get angry with me for not getting out of bed or just being able to sit on the couch. She just and she sat with me, and she accepted it, and she's truly the hero of my story. Without her, um, she stayed with me during these losses and these dark days, whereas someone else wouldn't. Um, and she held the family together. And when we were homeless, we were hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. She took over the financial situation, and when I couldn't, and she's truly the hero of my story. If not for her, I'd be in an SRO in Old Town here in Portland, on the street or eating at soup kitchens. I mean, she got me treatment, she got me help, she just advocated for me.
She sounds amazing.
Truly.
Absolutely amazing. So I'm hearing you describe all of this and it's resonating with stories I've heard in my office from my patients. And I'm thinking, okay, wow, you went from experiencing this to comedy to
Mhm.
stand-up comedy. So you're gonna
I
have
know,
to
I
Dave, you're gonna
know.
have to take us on this journey and help bring us along to this connect these dots here. How did you go from what you're describing to even contemplating the idea of stand-up comedy?
Yeah, and who knew? I mean, how do you don't chart this path. It just you don't chart this path. So, as we went along I started to get better, I found NAMI, National Alliance on Mental Illness,
Mhm.
and I found NAMI affiliate, and that was really helpful because one of the hardest parts for me was pretending. It was so hard to pretend to be okay in times when I was in a social situation or, was with somebody. I just pretended so it was so hard to pretend to be okay when I wasn't okay, and I knew people could see it in my eyes, so, but s so I found NAMI through Heather, my wife, and, they brought a actually, the county and there was a little notice in the newspaper, there was a class starting, a comedy class comedy class for folks with a mental illness, and at my wife's urging, I went, and the first time, I just sat there and, they asked to tell your story, I told some of my story, and the teacher or the comic that was teaching it said, "That's just sad," and it was just sad. I mean, it was just sad. But, by the second class, I was looking for humor in my experiences, and just starting to look for humor in my experiences was transformational. Whereas I'd be driving down the street or listening to radio and hear a song that triggered me, and I'd go into a panic attack because it reminded me of a bad situation.
Mm.
After taking the class, being in the class and looking for humor, when that song came on and started to trigger me, I'd say, "Okay, where can I find the humor in that?" And it reframed everything. And then it turned out I had the ability to find humor, write jokes, laugh out loud funny jokes, and I helped other people write jokes and find humor in their stories. Um, and then after the class ended, we performed, it went great. And on stage, I wasn't nervous because I was telling my story one joke at a time. It was completely honest. And, I liked my jokes, and the audience laughed, and it was great. But then the class wanted to keep going, so I facilitated the class, and then next thing, I was teaching a class, and I was teaching classes, and I saw the same transformation happening in other people that happened to me. It reframed everything. Um, it really, kickstarted my recovery, really kickstarted my recovery.
That
And,
is
the
amazing.
power of humor, it's yeah, I and, I wrote a book about it, it's called Healing with Humor, and it's a story of 6 people that went through the class and have had this transformation. It's inspiring, it's funny, their jokes are in there, and, hopefully be able to share those stories with other people, living with mental illness that relate, and they'll laugh, and family members can understand too.
Oh my gosh, I just
I know,
love that
so stand-up
journey.
comedy.
I
I know, and then pretty soon, we sold out the Helium Comedy Club, 180 feet, 5 people in the Helium Comedy Club, and, um, yeah, it wasn't long and I was a thing, and I mean, God knows who knew? I mean,
Pardon the interruption. It's time for our mid roll minute. You all have heard me talk about my speaker sisters and graduating from the Mic Drop Academy. Several of these wonderful women have been guests on Phoenix and Flame. Jess Ekstrom's Mic Drop Boot Camp and workshop were absolutely amazing. I learned so much in a short period of time and gained access to fabulous resources and an incredible support system of women. If you would like to feel more confident with speaking in front of others, whether it's a PTA meeting or a convention, use my links in the show notes and sign up. You will be so glad you did.
who
I
knew
love
I was
the way
funny?
you say, and I love this phrase. You say that you are a comic who shatters stigma one joke at a time. And I love this because people who are struggling and they think they're the only one, or
Yeah.
there's a shame component to it because maybe they, like you said, they've lost their job or whatever, and they feel badly because of what's going on with them, and they see the consequences kind of going on the people around them. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want people to know about it. They don't want to talk about it. And so that stigma grows and becomes more powerful the more, I heard a phrase one time, we are as sick as our secrets.
Oh,
And so the more secrets we're keeping, the more we're not talking about it, we just get sicker and sicker. And so I love the way you phrase this as you are a comic who shatters stigma one joke at a time because it gives you that platform to be funny, to tell a joke about it. But
mhm.
the comics are like the ultimate truth tellers, are they not?
They are.
They're the ultimate truth tellers in a very funny way where people can receive it and they can hear it and they can participate in it. What was your experience when you started being honest about different experiences and trying to shatter these stigmas? What kind of feedback did you get and what was your experience?
Well, first, when I was blogging, blogging for bphope.com, and I wrote all my blog posts, I was completely open and honest about that, and I told some of my stories, and, that helped me. The response from people was overwhelming. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, and the most common response was, "OMG, that's me telling my story." So many blog posts are, 3 steps to whatever, or things you can do to, solve this or help with that. Mine was just I just told the stories like I told you about going to the mailbox or too depressed to shower, and people could relate to that, and that's why I got so many views and whatnot. The comedy gave me an opportunity to be honest and to share my experiences. But it also, when you say to somebody, "What's the vision you have of people with a mental illness performing stand-up comedy?" It's like, um, you got this vision. I don't know, everybody's got a different vision of it. But people come to the shows, and here we are, and we live with serious mental illnesses. And we get up there and we're confident and capable and we're laugh out loud funny, and it changes people's perspective of, those of us with a mental illness.
Mhm.
They see us as being strong and funny and capable instead of being weak and vulnerable. Um, yeah, so that's part of shattering the stigma. Uh, but, I didn't tell people. I was ashamed. I knew the stigma. My wife did tell some people, about my bipolar disorder. The kids used to come over to our house and play, and after she told them, the kids she wouldn't let the kids come over to our house and play with our kids.
Mm.
Um, and so it was like, "Yeah, God, don't tell anybody.
Mm.
Don't tell anybody." But then I came out, so to speak, and that was huge. That was huge. One thing though is people, sometimes when they start talking about their mental illness, they overshare.
Mhm.
And and they tell their whole story, try to tell their whole story all at once, and people just back away, back away, back away. But, we can talk about it in bits and pieces, and, it's really healing, really
Yeah.
healing.
That is, and one of the things that I heard you describing, was I went through a speaking course one time, and
Mhm.
the leader was saying, share, be honest, be vulnerable, share things that are in your rear view mirror. Because when you're currently in it, like you said, you tend to overshare. You're kind of like dumping on the person. You're
Yeah,
almost
yeah,
clamoring on to them
yeah, yeah.
like they're your life raft instead of you being someone else's life raft. But when you've gone through something, like you said, the walking to the mailbox or learning how to like go sit in different places on the couch, you were sharing something that you had been through that was in your rearview mirror and you learned something helpful and then you were sharing. That's kind of the difference that I hear you describing.
Yeah, I think so, I think so. In the rearview mirror, yes. and these things that were being homeless, losing everything. I was a failure. I was a failure as a husband, father. I was a failure, and sharing about those experiences, opened it up, and um, I was able. I don't feel that way anymore. So yeah, what you said is exactly right, and you don't know what's going to happen in the future, and yeah, mental illness is something that you talk about in bits and pieces or to people that you're really close to.
Mhm.
I think for me, writing about it in my blog posts was really helpful. It helped other people. I think writing about our past experiences, I help people write, and people want to write their whole story, start at the beginning, go to the end. And I tell them, no, pick a spot, pick a story, pick an event, you know, and write about that. Write 600 words, write 800 words. Um, and then they're writing about a particular experience, brings it into the light,
Mhm.
helps them accept it and move on from that experience.
Exactly, and we all love a good story, so it helps them to become a storyteller,
Yeah.
zeroing in on one particular story. As I'm listening to you describe this, I'm wondering the people that you were teaching,
Mm.
how to be a stand-up comic, what did they struggle with the most? If you were to reflect back on your experiences with them and teaching them, what do you feel like they had the most trouble trying to overcome as they're learning to present their mental illness in a stand-up comedy fashion?
I think, first of all, being open and honest about their experiences. Once they were open and honest about their experiences, we could find humor in it and create jokes out of it. But people would come and, um, they'd sit and they wouldn't talk. So I started out, and it was as much a support group as a comedy group. And the classes run 10 weeks, so we had time to do that. And then there were some people that came in and they were, they'd come in and we'd in the first part of a joke called the setup is the truth, the honesty, the reality. And then the second part is the punchline that makes people laugh. It's a surprise, it's a creative part. And some people couldn't get to that creative part. They would we'd come up with a punchline and they'd say, "But that's not real." You know? That didn't happen. And so, that was they were the hardest ones to get past that, but they'd get past it. But really, during the class, as you're in there with a group of people and you're talking and you're being honest and you're developing relationships, and we went everywhere. We talked about everything, everything, everything. And so we went to all those places, the dark places, the hard places, the funny places, the everybody in most of the classes, almost everybody had suicide ideation, at some point.
Mhm.
And we talk about suicide, and they'd talk about that suicide ideation. We'd talk about, okay, okay, if you're gonna kill yourself, what are you gonna do? Jump off a bridge, run into a tree, and pretty soon we were laughing, we were talking. And so we were taking some of the one of the most important jokes I tell is a suicide joke. And, suicide's not funny, and you have to be but it's a gentle suicide joke, and it's huge, it's helped so many people, and my wife loves it, so I'd like to share it with you now, if
Well,
it's
I was
okay.
hoping you were gonna share it, as you can't
I
tell that
know,
and then not
after that.
share.
So, I had my experience with suicide and coming close to suicide. I went out to a park, I had a gun, I sat on a park bench, I looked at the river and the sun glinting off the river, and I didn't do it. I didn't do it. Um, so I had that experience with suicide, but, my suicide and joke is, one time during my dark days when things were really, really bad, I decided to end it all. So I went up into the bathroom and I took a bunch of pills. Afterwards, I called my wife for help. She said, "There are more pills under the sink."
That is hysterical.
It is. And talk about the breaking the taboo or the stigma and making it okay to talk about it. I had a fella I'm a peer support specialist, I work with folks, had a fellow who was seriously suicidal and, had a plan, all everything. His parents brought him in, he was an adult, but he was morose, walking slowly, monotone, flat-faced, no glint in his eye, and we talked, and we were talked together for about an hour, and at one point, I told him that joke, and he laughed, and his whole demeanor changed. His
Oh,
whole demeanor changed.
wow.
He said it's the first time he'd laughed in years, and it was a real belly laugh, and it was, uh and I had him come back the next day and the next day, and we talked, and we looked for humor in his other experiences.
Wow.
And I'm comfortable in saying it saved his life.
That is amazing. I wanna be very encouraging to you and to the listeners and the viewers that, sometimes when we put ourselves out there and do authentically what we feel led to do, there's almost always going to be critics. There's almost always going to be the naysayers, the people that judge us, that criticize, and that type of thing. I think it's important, I mean, to obviously listen to the feedback because there might be something legitimate in the feedback that can encourage us to reevaluate what we're doing. But at the end of the day, because I'm listening to you describe the suicide jokes, and I can imagine I would be shocked if you did not have people along the way who were battering you and probably calling you names and all kinds of things for doing this, and I'm so thankful that you stayed the course and that you let them have their opinion and you did not change your authenticity. What was your experience with that?
I honestly, when I tell that joke, it takes a beat before people come to, that it's okay to laugh, because it's a laugh out loud funny joke. I mean, it's just a funny joke. So, it takes a second. It's a suicide joke, and they're kinda apprehensive, and I tell the joke, and it takes just a beat before they start laughing. People with mental illness laugh. They laugh the loudest and the hardest. Family members laugh. They laugh loud and hard. I've only had one person come up to me after, a show and say, "You probably shouldn't tell that suicide joke because it's triggering." And I talked to them, and they were somebody in the mental health field, the helping profession, and they were thinking that somebody else might be triggered, and I've never met that somebody else, that person with the mental illness that was triggered. They think it's funny. They've had suicide ideation. They laughed out loud. It brings it out. And I think sometimes in the helping profession, people are out to save us, you know, to save people with the mental illness. They're out to protect us, and um, sometimes they treat us like childlike in a sense that we can't handle a word or a joke or whatever.
Mhm.
And it's exactly the opposite. We're strong, we're capable, we're able. We don't get triggered by a joke. We don't get triggered by the word suicide or the word crazy or the word, the game last night was insane. You, and that stuff doesn't trigger us. We don't need to be protected. And I'd say, if anybody in the helping profession, you know, um, we don't need to be saved. Support us and all that, but don't try to save us. We don't need it.
I love that. I love it. I So as we're wrapping up, and I do this with all of my guests as the queen of boundaries, I'm always interested in how boundaries have impacted your journey. Like, for example, like what boundaries protect your mental health and your creative work now, or you can look back on your past journey in ways that not having boundaries possibly worsened an experience, or having boundaries helped you in some kind of way.
Yeah, I think not having boundaries was during my mania, the flights of fancy, the grandiosity. I didn't have any boundaries. Um, my guilt I feel from the things I've done came from mania. The regrets I have from things I didn't do or how I did something, come from the depression. And so, I didn't have the boundaries with the mania and, had problems and challenges. Some boundaries, I s I've my sleep I sleep. I protect my sleep. I've got to get enough sleep. If I don't get enough sleep, I'm not well, and that's common with people with a mental health challenge. If I can tell when I'm starting to get depressed, I still get depressed, but I don't go as low. Mania's not so high. I don't go high. With the medication, I'm just pretty stable, but I can feel myself sliding down into that, and I protect myself by saying, "It's okay." You know? I don't have to do this right now. I don't have to go to this place right now. It's okay to say, "Hey, I'm not well." And so those, you know, those are important boundaries to me.
I love that. I'm hearing you say that you give yourself permission to say no. Someone
Yep.
might be inviting you somewhere, somebody might want you to do something or go somewhere or participate in something, but you know that you're in a place mentally where that's not a good choice for you. And so, what I'm hearing you say is that you're giving yourself permission to say no in those
Yes.
instances to protect yourself.
Yes, and that's very important. If I'm not well and I go, um, uh, um, it takes me days to recover, and I don't contribute really anything to the event.
Got
You
you.
know, if I'm there, go to an event that I'm not well, I have to I look for my chance to escape as quickly as possible. I go to the car, I lay down the seat so nobody can see me,
Mhm.
and I just try to hold it together. And so, yeah, saying no, I don't go through those experiences. I did. I went through them over and over and over. I kept trying to be social. I kept trying to do different things. Finally, I learned that it's okay to say no and, to protect myself and, you know, know that, I am gonna come out the other side. Um, like I said, with the Phoenix, and with going from successful businessman to dark days and lost years to peer support to blogging to stand-up comedy to being an author and writing books. Um, I kept rising from the ashes, um, and I kept trying. I kept trying,
Well,
even though
you're
I
definitely
failed.
an inspiration. Yeah, because it's failure. I think is inherent in life, and some people maybe feel like they get dragged around that more than others. And the getting up is the power. It's being that phoenix that's rising from that pile of ash. And I hear that in your story. Dave, I know that there are numerous people that are listening to this podcast, watching this podcast, that want more access to you. So the the website, which what I have on here is you want them to go to basically Amazon and to look for your book, the OMG That's Me exclamation point.
Yeah, that's 2 things actually in thinking about it. For reaching me, I'll just tell you my email. It's davemowry2, the number 2 at gmail.com.
Okay.
I have a website, davemowry.com. It's mostly focused on the books, but there's a contact. And then OMG, that's me. If anybody wants to know that they're not alone, uh, it's an inexpensive book. It's an easy read. Get the book or the Kindle or the audiobook, and you'll know you're not alone. If you're a family member and you wanna know what it's truly like to live with a mental illness, that's it. Those experiences, those dark days, those hard times, those panic attacks, the barely being able to get out of bed, the not being able to shower, that's what it's truly like to live with a mental illness. And then I've got a new book that just came out called Healing with Humor, and it tells the story of the people with, um, that took the class, and it shows the resilience and the strength. It's inspirational. So, if you wanna go to the books, that's great. If you wanna email me, that's great. I answer all my emails. Um, and so yeah, yeah. Those are the ways to reach out to me and find out more about me.
That is fantastic. Dave, I appreciate you being willing to spend your precious time
Hmm.
and your energy and share with us your wisdom and your experiences and being so transparent with myself and the Phoenix and Flame listeners and viewers. Thank you very, very much.
You're welcome. I appreciate the opportunity to be with you.
Now, listeners and viewers, my goodness, I know that you're thinking, wow, I have a friend, I have a coworker, I have a family member that absolutely needs to hear what Dave has to say. Take this podcast episode and copy and paste it, send it in a text, send it in the email, put it on your favorite social media sites so we can grow our Phoenix and Flame community and let people know you are not alone. I hope your day is going great. I hope the rest of it is fantastic. I'm Dana on Phoenix and Flame.